Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this OPENVERSE webinar. This is actually the second webinar of a series. In case you missed it, we had the first webinar on the state of the market of virtual worlds in Europe a few weeks ago, and you will shortly see a link in the chat where you can catch up with the recordings in case you missed it. So this webinar, in the last webinar, we looked at market data in terms of adoption. Here we look more on the application of virtual worlds. I am Lapo Fioretti, IDC analyst, and I'm very happy to be here today with Dr. Stephanie Garcia, representing VUB as a project manager. Welcome, Stephanie.
You.
And a few housekeeping points before jumping into the content of today. So this webinar is recorded, and the recording will be distributed to you all in the next couple of days. As you can see, only the speakers are allowed to use camera and mics, but there is a Q&A box where you're more than welcome and actually invited to put your questions and comments, and we will address those at the end of the presentation, as we will have a Q&A session at the end. Also, as I mentioned, keep an eye on the chat, as you will see a few OpenVerse related links, both on the series of webinar as well as some other great initiative that we have in the project. So the plan for today, I will deliver a short presentation looking at the again some market data, but on the application of virtual worlds in Europe, looking at key use cases, what drives those use cases, and at the same time what's hindering them. And then Stephanie will walk us through a real life use cases that it's a great display of, first of all, a concrete application of what I present in the first part of the presentation, but then even more importantly, how us as OpenVerse and specifically VUB actually developed a real life case study and real life application with virtual worlds. And as I mentioned, at the end of the presentation, we'll have a dedicated Q&A session. So without further ado, let's jump in today's content. Before we look at the use cases numbers, I wanted to take a step back and with a quick recap of what we covered in the previous webinar. This is the definition that we use for virtual worlds. It's worth re-anchoring it, so since it shapes everything that follows. So virtual worlds get used in a lot of different ways: gaming, metaverse, VR headset, and so on and so forth. For this keynote, we are using and for the whole project, we are using the European Commission definition that is shown here. And if you look at it in simple terms, we look at virtual worlds as persistent, so they don't disappear when you log off. They're 3D, real-time, and immersive, so the user is inside them, not just watching. And critically, they blur the line between real and virtual, so what you do in there also has weight in the real world. People and organizations use them for a wide range of things, whether it's socializing, working, learning, doing business, playing and creating. And that breadth matters because it tells us virtual worlds aren't a single product or a single industry, but they are rather a layer of technology that cuts across different sectors. The definition is the lens that we'll use for everything that follows. And when we show, some market data, use cases, and key trends in the next slide, they all sit within the scope. So it's not just gaming alone, it's not VR hardware alone, but the broader environment described here. With that frame in place, let's look at, again, with let's say, a short flashback of what we presented in the last webinar, look at where the market is in terms of adoption in Europe. So this chart shows the European organization adoption across a couple of years for virtual worlds technologies and how they're engaged with them between 2024 and 2025, split into 4 groups based on the current stance. So actively using, planning to use, interest, and not using. And the headline is quite clear. So adoption is moving in the right direction. Active users rose just under 40%, and the uptake is broadening beyond early adoption. The plan to use group shrunk slightly, but it's paired with the rise in active user, and that's intent converting into action. Interested but not using hold steady around 30%, which is a near-term pipeline of roughly a third of the market waiting for the right movement. And about 20% are not using nor interested. It's a small portion, but it's persistent, and it points to real barriers that we'll deep dive in a second. But if we look at costs, skills, business value, and we'll come back to those later because that's where European policies and investments can make a difference. Overall, a healthy adoption curve with a strong pipeline to convert. But then if we move and look through a different lens and look at the actual investments in terms of actual money, this chart shows where European investments in virtual worlds are actually going. And the story is quite interesting because it's not really a straight line. Here you see the spending growth, both year on year as well as the total spending in billion USD. And spending grows from 2.9 billion in 2025 to nearly 7 billion in 2030. And that's roughly at 19% compound annual growth, and the market more than doubles over the period. So the first thing that jumps out, however, is the dip that we have in 2025, where spending falls almost 90%. And it looks alarming, but it's a product transition, not really a demand problem. And also, let's say that the past couple of years, they've really been shaped by AI. So, other technologies suffered the full focus on AI. But if we look at specifically virtual world technologies, traditional VR headsets are being phased out as vendors shift their lineups to mixed reality and extended reality. Europe is particularly sensitive to this because the market here is still early stage and economically cautious. So 2025 was the hardware industry catching its breath before the next wave. Then if you look at at where we are today in 2027, back-to-back growth of 26 and 32%. This is the rebound. So two things are mostly driving it. So first, the new mixed reality hardware that fills the gap left by VR. And secondly, and more importantly, we've seen a lot of cases in the past couple of years, and also in the past couple of months, with smart glasses going mainstreams. Most common example is Meta's Ray-Ban, that are the obvious example here, with more competitors arriving. And in IDC, we expect the global XR device shipment to grow over 32% in 2026 alone. And Europe is riding this wave. From 2028 onwards, growth settles into a more normal range, around between 9 and 16% a year. It's not really a slowdown, it's sort of a maturation of the market, as the market is moving from early adopters, hardware sales, into enterprise deployment at scale. The fastest growing use cases that you will see later are around training, or around manufacturing AR, are around collaboration, which are practical embedded use cases inside how companies operate. So the key takeaway here is that Europe is moving from hardware experimentation to enterprise deployment, and the deep is noise. The trajectory and the real opportunity is virtual world technology becoming part of how work actually gets done over the next 5 years. So we've talked about how much companies are spending on AR/VR. Let's now look at where the money is actually going in terms of use cases. So these slides break down the use case landscape into three views: where today's spending is concentrated on the left-hand side, what's growing faster in the near term, and what will have the highest compound annual growth rate by 2030. Looking at these three together tells us a much richer story than any single ranking would. So, but then let's break it down. So today's top 5 by spending. So starting on the left, today's biggest spend category, gaming is still number one, which won't surprise anymore, I believe. It's been the entry point for consumer VR for a decade now. But it's interesting to look at what's right behind it. So it's floating desktop and video feature viewing, workstation and collaboration, training, and augmented maintenance. 4 of the top 5 are enterprise productivity use cases. And this is actually a quiet shift. The headline category is consumer, but then the depth of the market is already in the workplace. Companies are paying for VR to replace monitors, to run remote collaboration session, to train workforces, and to guide technicians through maintenance procedures with AR overlays. Then if you move on to the fastest growing this year, so in 2026, the middle column, the near-term breakouts, here we have more industry-specific use cases emerging. So assisted surgery is at the top, and it tells you something important, which is so the highest growth use cases in 2026 are clinical and educational, not consumer. Lab and field K-12 education is right behind it, and anatomy diagnostic rounds the list. So healthcare and education are where 2026 incremental spend is landing. And these are domains where immersive visualization solves a real problem that flat screens cannot. And then looking at the last one on the right-hand side, the highest CAGR through 2030, so where the curve bends sharpest over the full 5 years, we have assisted surgery show ups again, which means that it's not just a 2026 spike, it's a durable growth category. Then you see logistics and package delivery management entering the top of the chart alongside anatomy diagnostic and internal videography. Logistics is the interesting one here. That's virtual wars for um, warehouse pick and pack, route guidance, last mile coordination. It's the use case least talked about in a consumer media, but quietly the one with the cleanest ROI story. So stepping back from the 3 list, and the picture is clear. Today the money is going through towards productivity and entertainment, but tomorrow we're looking at healthcare, education, and logistic. If you're planning investment or partnership in this space, you shouldn't be anchoring only on what's biggest today, but looking at categories on the right hand side, will be the one that define the market in the long term. Just for information, this data comes from IDC Worldwide AR and VR Spending Guide, which is an IDC proprietary data set. So after looking at where the money is flowing, I'd like to go back to the market sentiment. And this slide shows what European companies actually plan to do, they're doing and plan to do with AR, VR, and XR. And it's based on an IDC survey across over 370 organizations in Europe. And the chart on the left covers AR and XR use cases, and the chart on the right covers VR use cases. For each, we asked, are you using this today? And do you plan to use it in the next 2 years? And how are you planning to use it in the next 2 years? So looking at the gap between the dark bars and the light bars, today only 10 to 80% of European firms are actually using technologies in these use cases. Within the next 2 years, this becomes 50 to 63%. That's roughly a 4-fold jump in stated intent. And this is a demand signal sitting underneath the spending forecast that you saw in the previous slide. So the 2025 dip in spending is a hardware transition, but the appetite to deploy is already here. Training is the clear number one. So the top planned use cases for both technologies the same. Training, 60% for AR and XR, 61% for VR. And it's not really a coincidence. Immersive training measurably improves retention and lowers the cost per trainee. And in a European context with skill shortages and an aging workforce and pressures to reskill, training is the easiest ROI story to put in front of a CFO, for example, and it's the use case that gets the budget approved first. Then customer experience and collaboration round out the top 3. Right behind training, we see customer experience at around 60% on both sides and collaboration in the high 50s. This reflects 2 big shifts. They move to a hybrid work where immersive collaboration tools are finding real traction, and the use case for AR and VR in retail and B2B sales showcase products. Both are practical, revenue adjacent application, not really an R&D project. And then let's look at the split between the two. Now, look at where the two technologies diverge. So AR and XR skew toward operational use cases, health and safety, assembly, augmented maintenance. These are heads up, hands free, on the job scenario. And this is the smart glasses wave. So the Ray-Ban Meta and what comes after. VR skews toward immersive use cases. So it's virtual simulation, product design, online commerce, showcasing. This is design reviews, simulation-based training, and a retail visualization. So the technologies aren't competing, they are being deployed for a different job. One word of caution, however, here, plan to use intent always overstates actual rollout. So some of the 50 to 60% planner will slip on budget, integration, or change management. So expect real deployment to land lower than the bar suggests, probably around 30 to 40%, which is still significant. And the direction of travel is unambiguous. And the bottom line is again here Europe has moved past the experimentation phase. Companies know what they want to use AR, XR, and VR for, and training, customer experience, collaboration, operation. The next 2 years are about converting that intent into deployment, and that's exactly what's driving the rebound in spending from 2026 onward. So we've seen so far the application, but now let's look at what's driving them. The key question is why are organizations adopting specific use cases and what are they getting back? So two charts here, driver on the left and benefits on the right. So start with the driver. Cost and efficiency leads at nearly 40%, which is no surprise. That's where every business case starts. But the second place, it's an interesting one, cybersecurity, around a little bit shy of 30%. European organizations are evaluating virtual worlds as part of a secure digital infrastructure. Trust and data protection are first-class concerns, which aligns directly with OPENVERSE positioning. After those, growth, innovation, and new customers cluster in the 20 to 25% range. So the mix is balanced, the defensive and offensive motivations together. Now the benefits. Here's the twist. Organizations come in chasing cost, but the strongest reported results are in process quality, product and service quality, and customer satisfaction. Cost reduction and time efficiency are real, but they are not the headline. Quality is in this case. And also 18% cite employee experience as a measure of benefit, which tells us that these technologies are changing how work feels and not just what gets done. So the key takeaway in one line is that organizations buy virtual worlds for efficiency, but they keep them for quality and people. That's exactly the value pattern you want for long-term adoption. So now let's look at the other side of the coin. So we've seen the market moving in the right direction. So the honest question is what's holding it back and what would actually help? So barriers on the left and accelerators on the right. Three barriers stand out. High cost. The business case is strong, but the entry ticket is still high. Skill shortage. 3 in 10 organizations don't have the people to deploy. And given the 78% expect workforce transformation in next year, this problem grows unless we act. And privacy concerns at around 28%, a healthy signals that European organizations take data protection seriously. The answer is trustworthy technologies and standard-based governance. Below the top three, a cluster of operational issues, so legacy integration, infrastructure, regulatory constraints, unclear ROI, and these paint the picture. So the technology works, but the ecosystem around it isn't fully built yet. The accelerator on the right map, on the right side map almost exactly to the barriers. So first, training and upskilling, the response to the skill gaps. Then second, financial incentive, public investment, tax instrument, grants to lower the entry ticket. Third, access to cloud-based platform for experimentation. Shared infrastructure that European initiatives are well placed to provide. So the key takeaway and the final point I want to make here is that the barriers here are really not technological. The technology is ready and the benefits are measurable. The barriers are about money, are about skills, and about access. Exactly the levers. Public investments, European policy, and ecosystem initiatives are built to pull. If we get those three right, European virtual doors market trajectory will accelerate. So we see where the market stands now. As I mentioned, let's look more into the core and the concrete with Stephanie, presenting the great case that the VUB team developed for the project. Stephanie, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Lapo. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Stephanie. I'm a project manager at VUB and IMEC, and today I'm going to be showing you the research led by my colleagues at VUB, which was developing industry-focused use cases for enhanced collaboration. First, I'd like to explain the problem and why does it matter. So return costs in European small and medium enterprises are high. And nowadays, since 2018 and 2023, there was an explosion of e-commerce. And nowadays, 68% of the European population buys online. And what does this mean? That returns generate costs, inspection labor, and waste. And if items cannot be resold, they become pure waste. So nowadays, the return rate is 54%. And of course, most of this has to do with the customer preferences, but 5% of the fulfillment is due errors or damaged goods that are put in the boxes and shipped. So nowadays, 60% still use paper to fulfill the orders. And here is where we saw an opportunity. Augmented reality, AR, is the opportunity and an interesting candidate because it does not replace the worker or the physical environment, but overlays digital information on top of it. So the workers still pick the items with their hands, still moves around, but instead of consulting a paper, they see the item name, the quantity, the shelf, location, and direct in the field of view. So the robot communicates its status through the AR, and there's no anxiety or unexpected movement around it. So the system we built for this experiment was using a hardware. We use MetaQuest 3, fully hands-free, so workers aren't holding a controller. The application was developed in Unit, and the robot used was the Universal Robot UR10E. And the task consists in 3 orders and 7 steps that I walk you through right now. So first, the robot brings the box, and then the worker checks the order list. Are there missing items? If there are, they look in the shelf, grab what's missing, and they can confirm, put all the items in a box, and then the robot collects the box. So how did we study it? We ran this study in 2 phases. The first phase was a survey answered by 53 workers from across 17 countries. And among the workers, they had an average of 4 years experience in small and medium enterprises in order fulfillment. But also we assessed the AR adoption, the worker attitude towards it, and any constraints in use. And 13% reported that they already used AR at work. The second phase of the study was a user acceptance study, which 27% of the participants, they complete a task twice, once with a paper, once with AR. And after each condition, they filled Almir questionnaire, which measures anxiety, intention of use, enjoyment, and how easy it is to use the system on top of usefulness and facility, attitude, social influence, and trust. And here we can see first what workers actually think about AR. So on the right side here, you can see that 83% expect increased productivity by using AR. Almost 68% see themselves using AR in the future. 51% are really willing to use AR right now, and 69.8-70% expect decreased physical workload by using AR. While the acceptance was really great, they have a main concern, which was eye strain, headaches, nausea, or any pain in the neck that can be caused by the weight of the device. So it brings us to the question that in the future we should develop more lighter devices, more ergonomic devices for those workers. The experiment itself. So
For
each
each order
participant.
to be fulfilled, the robot first brings a partially packed box to the participant. In the AR interface, the user sees an augmented packing list. If the item can be found in the box, the user confirms it. Otherwise, an augmented location indicator highlights the corresponding shelf compartment. Then, the user is asked to confirm the item was found and packed in correct quantity. After confirming all items, the user is asked to place the box within robot's reach. When confirmed, the robot will take the box away.
Okay, so here we saw how the experiment was developed in terms of the robot. The other condition was condition B, where there was a paper picking. So they basically had 6 papers list and matched with the box by the order ID. And the box reception was controlled manually via push buttons. So where AR wins. So perceived enjoyment was significant when compared using paper or using AR. So it was higher. You can see 4.19 versus 3.25 versus paper. Social influence was significant as well, scoring higher. And anxiety, there was no increase of anxiety by using AR. And here you can see the intention of use was significant, and perceived enjoyment, and also social influence. However, where paper still wins, at least for now, is the completion time. So people using paper were fulfilling the order in 6 minutes, 6.3 seconds, 30 seconds versus 7.81, which we can put this difference in the fact that they did not have experience with AR before, which we believe it's a learning curve. It's the main driver of this difference. Intention of use, paper, unfortunately, was the preferred one because of concerns, comfort concerns, as I mentioned before, of the weight of the device and eye strains with the hardware. But other than that, there was no other reasons. And why we believe this will change. With a lighter hardware, we believe this will change significantly. And simply by the fact of the workers having more familiarity with the expected device would help in the future of having the better adhesion of these workers. So here you can see in this table, the complete time was better in paper, and the intention of use was also better in paper, but AR won in perceived enjoyment and social influence. And to conclude, we found that AR significantly improves the perceived enjoyment. AR does not raise anxiety in any of the participants. Paper still wins on speed, and hardware comfort is one of the main concerns and something that should be looked for in the future. This study was published last week in the and you can find the full paper online. And this work was developed by the first author, Alex, and all the work was already published. That's what I have for today. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Stephanie. Great representation, great display of a real life application of a virtual world, and great that it was part of the OPENVERSE project. As you mentioned, here we have time for a few questions in case you have any from the audience. I'll give it a minute for you to open to submit your question in the Q&A box. While we wait for the question to come in, just a reminder that the next and last webinar of this series will happen on June 16, and in the last webinar, we'll look at the key requirements for a sustainable European virtual world ecosystem. So we looked at adoption use cases. Now we look at the broader ecosystem, looking at the key partners, at the requirements, both from an ethical and legal standpoint, to create a vibrant and growing ecosystem in Europe for virtual worlds. So I don't see any question. You are more than welcome to. Okay, I see one now, which I think a couple now. So the first one here, could you elaborate a bit more on the specific hardware improvements that could help relieve the pain problems the user had? Weight of the glasses, other factor. I believe this is for you, Stephanie.
Yes, that's a good question. I believe, I'm not a specialist in robotics or AR, but I believe with the development of AR and better, now there's competitions, not only Meta making the devices, they would aim for lighter devices that would significantly improve the quality of the workers. So I think that's the way they should go at the moment.
Yeah, if I can handle that from a market perspective, we saw it with the Apple Vision Pro when it launched. It was kind of a flop. Now with the Ray-Ban Meta, although they're more on the consumer side and not on the business side, but the huge success that they had was because they started with the light product with the very common sunglasses, and it solved a lot of the issues that the Apple Vision Pro had. Another one which is related to that, do you think that AR glasses will help in decreasing the anxiety or easiness of use if you tied it in the experiment?
I think so. I think it would be not only easier, it would be more enjoyable. And once they get more familiar, you don't need to touch twice. You just get one touch and then things get smoother. So I think in the future, this can be very helpful and really improve the time.
Amazing. Perfect. I think that's all the time that we had today. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for the presentation today.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
for everyone for attending. As a reminder to register for the last webinar of the series. And yeah, you will receive the recordings shortly. And yeah, you can contact us if you have any questions offline. Thank you all very much.